everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, we are talking about turning to your past to reveal your future. Past several weeks, I have been really trying to figure out how I want to move the Gamerpreneur forward. I've had a lot of different options. I've spoken to several different people about it. I've been kind of looking at where I'm at, where my family is at, where my various businesses and clients are at, and then what I intend to do with this show. And, I've tried to make this show, a lot like a case study, kind of doing things that I'm telling you all that I'm doing, kind of showing you how it's gone for me over the past, little over a year now. And, I wanted to kind of pause for a second and kind of let you know what my thought process has been the past couple of weeks, because I think it's something that a lot of people could benefit from, and it's something that I would normally work through with my clients. Is what are the things that you have done in your past that caused you to not succeed or to have failed at some endeavor in the past? And a lot of people are afraid of looking at those things. They don't want to admit that they've done something wrong. They don't want to talk about, where they screwed up or if they did the thing, like their egos get in the way and they just aren't willing to let that information be processed in a healthy way. And so a lot of people will get angry, or they'll find someone else to blame, and that's not a really good way to advance a business. So kind of as an example, what I'm talking about, I've looked at a lot of the different business deals that I've done over the years. And some have resulted in a contract. Some have definitely not. I think I've told you once before, I was in negotiations with somebody in the real estate space. He was a really big influencer, and I'd written this training program on how to use Facebook advertising for real estate. And I had spent months writing this. I had all kinds of additional materials and worksheets and just the whole shebang when it comes to trying to figure out how to advertise. And it was very specific to the real estate space. And when I was negotiating with that individual, it was clear that I was not prepared for that negotiation. This was way, way, way back. I was still new in the business game. I had been an attorney, and then we had just had to stop the attorney thing because of the complications my wife had during her pregnancy, because of the baby. And so we switched, and we had all this stuff that we had used in order to grow our law practice. And we were getting into real estate investing at the time, and we were going to real estate groups, and we were learning all this stuff, and we were training people there. And we had some clients there that we were, advising. And so we were really reaching up to talk to this one dude. And it was pretty clear that we were not prepared. And so fast forward to today, I'm able to look back at that particular situation that I was in, and I can go, what was it about how I presented myself, the materials that we were doing, how the negotiations went, how we communicated, what we were asking for beyond the pay. We'd actually asked him to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and that had almost essentially ended the discussions right there. He wasn't even willing to talk to us for 2 months because we'd asked him for a non-disclosure agreement. And turns out a lot of investors are a lot like that. They have no interest in even talking to you if you even mention the word non-disclosure agreement. Then again, some people are going to absolutely require a non-disclosure agreement. So in that particular situation, if I had not asked for non-disclosure, maybe things would have ended up differently, but maybe not. So, you take a look at all the different elements of a particular situation that happened in your life, that whether you blame that situation or not for how your life has turned out, take some solace in the fact that, whether or not the situation turned out well or it was really bad, you're able to learn something from it. So what is it you're able to learn? How can you learn from the past in order to have the future of your dreams? What are those things that you are doing wrong over and over and over and over again, that if you could just change it this one time, things would be different for you? And this is something I've seen a lot of people actually encounter. One of my biggest clients in Las Vegas, I don't have him anymore, so he's a former client. His biggest issue was he was tied by his family. His family was the thing that kept him down, rather than lifting him up and encouraging him. And the reason for it was he was driven in order to help support his family. He was all about his family, and his family was not all about his goals and his dreams. And so the issue for him was he didn't have buy-in from the family. Because he didn't have buy-in, every time he went home, he was just being bombarded by negativity. They were telling him to quit, they were telling him to leave, and that's not what he wanted, because another part of his family had started the business originally. And so here he was caught between his current family and the idea of what his family, his namesake, had built in the past. And so he knew he wanted to continue that, but his current family wanted nothing to do with it. And so here he was torn between these two ideals of who he saw himself as, and then there was his own beliefs of what he was. And so, every time I would bring this to his attention, that you have to reconcile what's going on at home with what's going on in the business. Otherwise, it's going to wreck you. You're going to sleep at the office because you just don't want to go home anymore. No matter how many months I told him that, he just wasn't willing to have that discussion. And he wasn't willing to confront any of his family members about it, because he didn't want to upset the balance. He was comfortable with the fact that things were going along the way they were, even though it wasn't heading in the direction he wanted to. He always kind of had the belief things would eventually turn around, and he just wasn't facing the issues that were holding him back. So, think about yourself. What are those things in your life that, if you looked back in the past, you have done over and over and over again to your own detriment? Maybe it's the way that you are communicating with a friend or a family member or an employee, that you find yourself having the same kind of interactions with people over and over again. Well, if you have the same interactions with people over and over again, you could look at the lowest common denominator, which is going to be yourself. What about yourself caused that situation? Was it something that you said, or something that you did, or some way that you acted that you may not even recognize that you were doing at the time, but somebody else was paying attention? Because if that's the case, all you got to do is start paying more attention to what's coming out of your mouth, or how you're acting, or how you're treating other people, as one example. Or maybe you are the kind of person who manages to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. Like, you've already got everything. All they got to do is sign the deal. And then when it comes to time to do the deal, you're drunk, or you're belligerent, or you just decide that right now, as things are wrapping up, everything's already been decided, I want to ask for more. If that's happened to you over and over and over again, and you're still not successful in the way that you want to be, maybe it's because of these little things that you keep doing over and over again. So take some time. Your life is not, oh gosh, the guy who wrote Tom Sawyer, Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens. He wrote that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Okay, the same situation isn't necessarily going to come up in your life again, but a situation very, very similar to it is likely to come up. Whether it's a business, or whether you're trying to build your own influence online, we have these stories that we've told ourselves that condition us to act certain ways. And if you can go back and you can look at your past and see what you've done, you can kind of start to pull out and, grab the thread of these stories and see where it began. And if you can figure out where your story began, that has caused you to have failure after failure in your life, you can go back to the source and then realize that it was either a parent or a teacher or some sort of mentor who, while well-meaning, probably didn't quite know what they were talking about, and told you something that led you to take some action that wasn't necessarily for your benefit. It was more for their comfort in feeling that you were going to be secure or safe, or making sure that you weren't acting a certain way, and maybe they did something that wasn't the right response to the way you were acting. That, everybody's different. Everybody has a different motivator or a different impetus that caused them to act the way they are. But if you look back in your past, over and over and over again, you will find that you've acted a certain way, and you've done certain things at certain times that have led you to where you are now. And if you can break that pattern, if you can stop yourself the next time from acting the way that's resulted in failure after failure, you can move forward in your life and you can grow and you can develop. So, with that said, I'm going to remind you all, organization is the enemy of sloth. It's as simple as pulling out a piece of paper. I know paper, who uses it anymore? Just pull out a piece of paper and then you write down, just some stories from your past. Like, think about the times that were tough for you. I know it might be difficult, but think about them. Listen, be willing to be vulnerable, at least with yourself, and sit there and write out the situations that you've been in that were rough, that were tough, that didn't quite go the way that you wanted. And really sit and think. Try to put yourself in the situation of that memory of what were you doing, what was said, what happened, and what was the result. I've come across as a nice guy a lot, and a lot of people try to take advantage of me for it. I'm not a huge fan of people trying to take advantage of me just because I seem like a nice guy. So, that has been one of those things that has popped up in my past over and over again. People look at me and they're like, oh yeah, he's a nice guy. Well, this is what we're going to give you. Like, that's not what I'm willing to offer you. And I'm the service provider. But regardless, organization's enemy of sloth. Make sure you're taking a good hard look at your past. Your past will guide your future because that's how it is. You are defined by your past. Everything that you were taught as a child is how you're living now. That's just what it is. All right, everybody. Don't be just a gamer. Be a gamerpreneur.